But it is great. We've been given $2.1 million towards 6 projects under the 2021-22 Black Spot program. It's much needed. We've got some significant black spots here in Newcastle and the Hunter. Joining me on the line now from isolation in Canberra is Liberal Patron Senator for the Hunter, Holly Hughes. Good morning and thanks for joining me, Holly.
Good morning, Tracy.
How are you going down?
I'm a bit worried how my brain and mouth are going to work. I haven't seen another person. Well, I had a test on Tuesday, but yeah, I haven't seen anyone since then.
Oh, are you loving Zoom meetings or are you avoiding those as well?
I've done one Zoom meeting. Everything else has been teleconferences. So, yeah, the requirement for makeup has dropped off in the last couple of days, I must say, and a blow dry.
Oh, that's great. That's just what you want. Now, you're obviously left from, you're based in Sydney and you've gone down to Canberra, obviously. How have you found it?
Well, it is seriously bizarre. I've had 3 weeks at lockdown at home in Sydney, so did the school holidays at home, lockdown. Came down to Canberra so that I can attend, because we've got 4 out of 5 sitting weeks through August, so it is quite important that we're here. We need to pass legislation so that we can do payments and those sorts of things linked to COVID, amongst other things. But, yeah, 2 weeks of isolation. It's not even quarantine. It's full-blown isolation. I'm not allowed out to go for a walk, regardless of the fact I'm fully vaccinated and had a negative test on Tuesday. So it's, I don't know, this seems like one of the more severe kind of responses to inter-Australia travel.
It's really interesting, especially as you are fully vaccinated and you've been safe. You've already been in quarantine. We've got to find a solution for people who are vaccinated, don't we?
Look, absolutely, and I think it is getting to that number. One of my frustrations is the rest of the world is literally opening up on the back of AstraZeneca. Now, I had the Pfizer, but had I not had a choice, I definitely would have had the AstraZeneca. And in reality, AstraZeneca is based on sort of basically old medical and research that we understand and know, traditional vaccines. Pfizer is actually a new type of vaccine. So the risks associated with Pfizer, we don't really actually know a lot of them. That's all still going to come out. But everyone seems hung up on this incredibly minute risk of a clot with AstraZeneca. Now, the risk is higher with the contraceptive pill, as well as many other things for a clot, than it is with AstraZeneca. Plus, since it's been identified, we've become a lot better at identifying it and treating it early. So, this hesitation that we're seeing around AstraZeneca that seems to be perpetuated through the media. I mean, I saw some tweets yesterday of people complaining there's not enough Pfizer shots. Well, there's not enough Pfizer shots, but there's heaps of AstraZeneca, and the AstraZeneca is produced here. In fact, we're making so much of it that we're actually sending some overseas. So, my message to everyone is just get out there, get what you can get. And also, the other thing that, and we're working on it on my website at the moment, so I'll let you know when it's up and running, a lot of people are just going to the state health vaccine hub looking for an appointment. These vaccines are now available through an awful lot of GPs, and there are links to that through the federal health website where you can go to a GP and get vaccinated. So, you hear people say, I couldn't get an appointment for so long, but they're through the state-run vaccine hubs. Lots and lots of GPs are giving it now, and that number's consistently increasing. So, there's multiple ways. As I said, I'll let you know when we update it on our website. We're doing that at the moment because, and that's just something that we're doing because the confusion seems to be rife about where people can get the vaccine or not. But if you are over 16, under 40, however you want to put it, you can now access AstraZeneca. 40 to 49 still Pfizer, and then over 50 AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca is way safer than the virus. You can die from the virus.
Oh, we're seeing that in New South Wales at the moment.
Much more likely than getting, a clot. So, we just have to stop this hesitancy. We have to stop this bad messaging and get people out there because the faster we get this done, the faster these state governments are going to lose the ability, because this is where the ISOs, the quarantines, the lockdowns, border closures are coming from. We need to remove that ability for the states to do that and start, reopening up businesses, allowing people to move around their own country, because this is just getting, in my view, out of control.
There has, though, been an issue with the vaccination rollout, as you said, from that. There's no doubt, the Prime Minister has actually come out today and taken responsibility for the slowdown of it, for what's happened. Do you agree with that? Does a lot of this lay at the foot of the Prime Minister and just the changing in the messaging, the slowness of us getting Pfizer once we realised that AstraZeneca was going to be an issue? There are things that we could have done to have prevented this. There's no doubt about that, Holly.
Look, I think the messaging is where the biggest problem is. And if you look at the advice that ATAGI's given, it's all over the show. Last year I chaired an inquiry into vaping, and I was fought every step of the way by the TGA. But if you go over to the UK and you look at what they're doing over there where it comes to smoking cessation and vaping, they've fully embraced vaping and their smoking rates have reduced significantly. The TGA here has a very, very different view, and it's still a little bit beyond me. I find it quite strange. And so I find what ATAGI's doing now is quite strange when you look at what's happening overseas, and the fact that the rest of the world is opening up, the fact that the AstraZeneca is in fact the most widely accepted vaccine internationally. So when we want to open up again and international governments are looking at letting vaccinated people in, it is more countries in the world that are opening up to those that have been vaccinated with AstraZeneca. So, this messaging that we seem to have put out across the country that has been perpetrated and continued, the disgraceful comments that were made by the Queensland Premier and Chief Health Officer up there about I wouldn't get it, threats of quads. I mean, that was just absolutely scaremongering and disgraceful and has set AstraZeneca back for absolutely no valid reason. So I just would implore Australians to just start to use a little bit of their own sense. When you go in and get a flu vaccine, do you ask what brand it is?
No, of course you don't.
When you take your kids to get vaccinated, do you ask what brand it is? Like, the fact that all these so-called cash for comment epidemiologists are now vaccine experts as well and are starting some scare campaign, I'd be interested to know, AstraZeneca's out as a not-for-profit vaccine. Pfizer is very much for profit. And we've got an entire country that seems to be obsessed with getting the Pfizer. It's interesting, where that dynamic's coming from. That's
something that I hadn't actually even thought about. But, as you say, we're producing our own AstraZeneca here. And, well, that's one for pay grades way above mine, my love. Now, listen.
Probably about mine. Whilst we're at it, Trace, we'll solve all the problems of the world.
Absolutely. Let's go for it. Now, we are looking to solve some black spots here in Newcastle and the Hunter. There's about $2.1 million of the fund that is coming here to Newcastle and the Hunter. Some of the roads are, there's the new Lambton intersection of Lambton Road and Tarango Road. Now, that is horrendous there. We've got some in Aberglasslyn. We've got $350,000 for Nelson Bay, which is very much needed. Gangan Road is horrendous. Tell me what's gone into to supply, choosing which black spots we're going to fund at the moment.
Well, there is actually a process that's gone through where people could nominate particular areas of concern, and I would, suggest to any locals that are listening to this thinking, hang on, we've got a bad area, black spot in my area, to actually go on to the Australian Government's Black Spot program, and there is actually a link there that you can nominate them, because this is an ongoing program. We very much recognise that when you have these sorts of small black spot areas, the impact that can have on a community via significant accidents, deaths, and even just, on the lesser extreme, slowing down of traffic and causing bottlenecks. These are the sorts of things that we want to keep improving upon and making sure that we're making communities safer, but also opening up the opportunities, because if that, all of this sort of infrastructure impacts on a region's ability to ultimately achieve its economic goals. And that's what we want to make sure that we're helping the Hunter, helping the whole region continue to grow, and not seeing these small areas that it's a lot of money, but in the big scheme of government, it's it's not a huge amount of money, but it can make such a significant difference to a community.
Holly, why is there a federal government black spot program when roads are obviously under a New South Wales government area? Why is the federal government funding these black spots?
Well, it is a joint effort with the state governments and the local governments as well. So I think we need to see all levels of government working together. The federal government does have interest in federal and national roads, so it's something that we want to be a part of to make sure that we can ensure that the infrastructure and the transport and regional development that we want to see continue to grow is happening as quickly as possible. It's the M1 extension is both a federal and state initiative. It's not unusual to see combined efforts of government within this space.
Now, since you and I talked, the M1 extension is certainly ramping up. You must be pleased to see that happening as well.
It's fantastic. I mean, we've had it in the federal budget for a couple of years now, so it's great to see that state government side of it is starting to move ahead. And the sooner we can get that project underway and completed, the better.
Now, you mentioned that if anyone is aware of a black spot in their area, they can actually go on. So it's not up to your local government or your state government. It is up to us as a community to get on there and show the federal government where these black spots are.
Yeah, so it's investment.infrastructure.gov.au. And then it's /funding/black spots. But I'm sure you've got the media release there, and we'll have it up as well if people want to have a look at that. But sometimes it is really those small communities that have particular areas that maybe aren't well known about that can have really bad impacts if the accidents occur on them. I know where I used to live in Moree, 80 k's west of Moree, I had a terrible car accident where I rolled my Land Cruiser 5 times and broke my back. I can tell you, I know what an impact they can have. And it was just a small part of a dirt road with a terrible S-bend in it, with the camber was going in the wrong direction. Like all of those sorts of things can have absolutely terrible consequences. I was just lucky that the wheels landed in the tree, not the roof. Or we could be having a very different conversation, if at all. So, I'm more than aware that the impact that these black spots can have on local communities. And it is up to people sometimes to just sort of take that initiative themselves, because we don't want to think, sometimes people think, well, someone else will do that. Sometimes you've got to take a little bit of responsibility yourself. And great, if 20 people go and do it, that's fantastic. But make sure that it is on the record. It is one of those ones that is looked at. And we can make sure that we're trying to rectify as many of these as possible, because too many lives are lost on these roads, and we know what a terrible toll that has on their families and the broader community. So we want to make sure that those sorts of things are fixed as much as we can.
Well, look, thank you for joining me, and congratulations. There are 6 projects that have been funded here in Newcastle and Hunter, $2.1 million. Thank you so much for your time, and how much longer have you got in isolation?
So this is day 3.
Oh, no.
So considerably longer. I'm very grateful to my staff for filling my days with phone calls and meetings.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm not sure what the weekend's going to bring, but anyway, we'll see.
Oh, God. And how are the kids going in Sydney? They're obviously still in lockdown as well.
Yeah, so they're with their dad in lockdown, and I've sort of said to them, because I will then be in Canberra for 7 weeks because I can't leave. If I go back to Sydney, I have to do another 2 weeks of ISO, so I will be here until the death knell of Parliament. But I said to the kids, I'll get you to come down to Canberra as soon as you're allowed out. But when I spoke to my youngest last night, I said to him, "Babe, you don't want to come down here and be stuck in the apartment." Because that's basically what had happened. They'd have to come down and do isolation. So,
wow.
This is, these are the challenges for families when everyone's not always living in the same spot all the time. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, we will keep on keeping on.
Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting for our younger generations that are growing up through this. They certainly have a different resilience and attitude, because I'm not quite sure we'd have all accepted it the same way.
Yep, without doubt. Look, you stay safe, and we'll chat with you again soon.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. That is Holly Hughes, who is the Liberal Patron Senator for the Hunter